February 12, 2015, a groundbreaking DNA study published in Nature sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Researchers analyzing ancient skeletons from across Europe had expected to find simple family connections between ancient populations and modern people. Instead, they uncovered something far stranger. Hidden inside the genomes of thousands of individuals were traces of bloodlines that seemed to appear, disappear, and reappear throughout history. Some genetic signatures survived for thousands of years. Others vanished completely, and a few appeared in places where they had no obvious right to exist. At that moment, scientists realized that human ancestry was far more complicated than anyone had imagined. For centuries, history had been told through kings, empires, and wars. But DNA was revealing a different story. A story written not in books, but in blood. Every person alive today carries a genetic record stretching back through countless generations. Hidden inside every cell are approximately 3.2 billion DNA letters, forming a biological archive older than any civilization on Earth. That archive remembers everything. It remembers migrations, it remembers survival, and sometimes it remembers people that history forgot. The mystery begins nearly 300,000 years ago. Long before cities, before agriculture, before written language, small groups of Homo sapiens lived across Africa. Fossils discovered at Jebel Irhoud in Morocco suggest that some of the earliest known members of our species walked the earth around 315,000 years ago. They hunted, they adapted, they survived. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity remained in Africa, evolving and diversifying into different populations. Then something extraordinary happened. Around 70,000 years ago, a relatively small group of humans began moving beyond Africa. No one knows exactly why. Some researchers point to climate change. Others suggest population pressure. Whatever the reason, these travelers began one of the greatest journeys in human history. Genetic studies suggest that almost every person living outside Africa today descends from this migration. A few thousand individuals changed the future of the world. As they crossed into the Middle East and spread across Eurasia, they entered lands already occupied by another human species, the Neanderthals. Powerful hunters who had survived Europe's harsh climates for hundreds of thousands of years. For decades, scientists believed Neanderthals vanished without leaving descendants. Then, in 2010, everything changed. Geneticist Svante Pääbo and his team successfully sequenced the Neanderthal genome. The results were astonishing. Modern humans and Neanderthals had interbred. Today, most people of European and Asian ancestry still carry approximately 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA, tiny fragments, ancient genetic echoes. Proof that bloodlines can survive long after entire populations disappear. But the surprises were only beginning. In a remote cave in Siberia, scientists discovered a tiny finger bone belonging to a young girl who lived tens of thousands of years ago. The bone looked insignificant, yet when researchers extracted DNA from it, they discovered something completely unexpected. It belonged neither to a modern human nor a Neanderthal. It belonged to an entirely unknown human population, the Denisovans. Before that moment, nobody even knew they existed. No legends remembered them. No ancient texts described them. No civilization recorded their name. Yet their DNA revealed that they once lived across vast regions of Asia. Even more astonishing, traces of Denisovan ancestry still survive today. Some populations in Papua New Guinea and Oceania carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA. An extinct people had left behind a living genetic legacy. And suddenly, scientists were forced to confront an uncomfortable possibility. How many other forgotten bloodlines had existed throughout human history? How many populations had vanished without leaving monuments or cities or written records? And how many still survived inside modern genomes? The answers began emerging through ancient DNA. Until recently, archaeologists could only guess where ancient people came from. Now they could test it directly. Every skeleton became a time capsule. Every genome became a witness. And with each new discovery, the story became more complex. Ancient Europe, for example, was once thought to be populated by a relatively continuous population. DNA destroyed that assumption. Researchers discovered that modern Europeans inherited ancestry from at least three major population groups. The first were ancient hunter-gatherers. The second were early farmers who expanded from Anatolia around 8,000 years ago. The third were horse-riding pastoralists from the Eurasian steppe. Each migration reshaped the continent. Each wave mixed with those already living there. Each left genetic signatures that remain visible today. Yet some lineages refuse to fit neatly into these categories. In isolated mountain valleys, remote islands, and forgotten corners of the world, researchers kept finding unusual genetic markers. Markers that appeared older than expected, markers that seemed disconnected from nearby populations. Markers that hinted at migrations nobody had recorded. One of the most fascinating examples comes from the Caucasus Mountains, often called a crossroads between Europe and Asia. The region contains extraordinary genetic diversity. Villages separated by only a few kilometers sometimes possess remarkably different ancestry profiles. For thousands of years, mountains acted as natural barriers, preserving ancient bloodlines that disappeared elsewhere. In many ways, these communities became living museums of human history. The same pattern appeared again and again across the world, in Sardinia, in the Basque region, in isolated Himalayan communities, in remote Pacific islands. Ancient ancestry survived where geography protected it. And every discovery revealed another piece of humanity's forgotten past. But perhaps the greatest mystery involved something much closer to home. Family trees. Most people imagine ancestry as a straight line stretching backward through time. The reality is far stranger. 20 generations ago, a person theoretically has more than 1 million ancestral positions. 30 generations ago, the number exceeds 1 billion. Far more than the population that existed in many regions at the time. The reason is simple. Bloodlines constantly overlap, the same ancestors appear repeatedly, families merge, populations mix, and over thousands of years, nearly every surviving lineage becomes connected. This realization transformed how scientists viewed ancestry. Human history was not a collection of separate stories. It was one enormous interconnected network, a network formed by migration, adaptation, and survival. Yet despite all the advances in genetics, certain mysteries remained unsolved. Researchers continued finding unexpected DNA segments that did not perfectly match known populations. Ancient genomes occasionally revealed ancestry from groups that had never been identified archaeologically. Some genetic signatures appeared suddenly in the historical record and then vanished. Others survived for millennia against all odds. The deeper scientists explored the human genome, the more they discovered that history was incomplete. Entire chapters were missing. Entire populations remained unnamed. Entire bloodlines waited in silence beneath the surface of recorded time, and among those hidden bloodlines was one mystery that would lead researchers across continents, through ancient migrations, and into the very origins of civilization itself, because the next discoveries would reveal that some of humanity's most important ancestors were not the people history remembered, but the people history forgot. The breakthrough came from bones buried beneath layers of soil, stone, and time. For generations, archaeologists had uncovered ancient graves across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Most were catalogued, studied, and stored away as fragments of forgotten civilizations. But when geneticists began extracting DNA from those remains, they discovered something remarkable. History had underestimated the scale of human movement. People were traveling farther, mixing more frequently, and reshaping populations much earlier than anyone had imagined. One of the clearest examples emerged from the vast grasslands north of the Black and Caspian Seas. Around 5,000 years ago, a population known today as the Yamnaya expanded across enormous distances. These pastoralists lived on the Eurasian steppe, moving with cattle, sheep, and horses through open landscapes stretching thousands of kilometers. Ancient DNA revealed that their expansion was not a minor migration. It was a demographic transformation. Within only a few centuries, Yamnaya-related ancestry appeared across large parts of Europe. Entire regions experienced dramatic genetic change. New bloodlines arrived carrying different different technologies, and possibly different languages. For decades, archaeologists debated how cultures spread. DNA provided an answer. Sometimes ideas moved, sometimes people moved, and sometimes both moved together. The genomes of modern populations still carry evidence of these ancient encounters. Haplogroups such as R1a and R1b became increasingly common across vast areas of Eurasia. Today, millions of men trace their paternal ancestry through branches that expanded during these prehistoric migrations. Yet even this was only one layer of a much larger story. As researchers sequenced more ancient genomes, they discovered that nearly every population carried ancestry from multiple sources. No civilization appeared from nowhere. No bloodline existed in isolation. Every group inherited pieces of older populations. Every migration carried fragments of an even deeper past. The Middle East revealed another chapter of this mystery. Often called the cradle of civilization, the region witnessed the rise of agriculture, cities, writing, and organized states. But genetically, it was also one of the world's great crossroads. For thousands of years, populations moved through the region from Africa, Europe, Central Asia, and South Asia. Trade routes connected distant communities. Empires expanded and collapsed. Armies marched, merchants traveled, families migrated, and with every generation, bloodlines mixed. Modern genetic studies continue to find evidence of these ancient connections. A DNA sample collected in one country may reveal ancestry from regions hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. What appears today as a distinct population often contains genetic contributions from numerous historical migrations. The deeper scientists looked, the less meaningful the idea of a pure bloodline became. Human history simply did not support it. Instead, DNA revealed a story of constant interaction. One of the most fascinating discoveries involved adaptation itself. Certain genetic variants survived not because they belonged to powerful civilizations, but because they improved survival. The EPAS1 gene found among Tibetan populations is one famous example. This variant helps the body function efficiently at high altitudes where oxygen levels are low. Researchers later discovered that this adaptation likely originated from Denisovans. An extinct human population had contributed a biological advantage that remains useful today. In a sense, the Denisovans never completely disappeared. Their legacy continues in the bodies of people living thousands of years later. The same pattern appears elsewhere. Genes associated with immunity, metabolism, and environmental adaptation often trace back to ancient encounters between populations. Sometimes survival depended not on isolation, but on exchange, not on separation, but on connection. And yet, despite these discoveries, some mysteries remain unresolved. Modern genetics can reconstruct migrations. It can estimate ancestry. It can identify relationships between populations separated by vast distances. But there are limits. DNA cannot always tell us what people believed. It cannot fully explain why some cultures vanished while others survived. It cannot reveal every language spoken by ancient communities. And it cannot always identify every population that contributed to the human story. There are still ghost populations, groups known only through the genetic traces they left behind. Scientists see their fingerprints in DNA, but their names, faces, and histories remain unknown. In some cases, researchers can detect ancient ancestry from populations for which no physical remains have yet been discovered. The genes exist, the people remain invisible. It is one of the most extraordinary aspects of modern science. DNA can reveal the existence of populations before archaeology finds them. The genome sometimes knows history before historians do. This realization has transformed anthropology. Every new ancient genome has the potential to uncover an entirely new chapter of human history. Every excavation could reveal a forgotten migration. Every skeleton might carry evidence of a people no one knew existed. The human story is still being written, and perhaps that is the most important lesson hidden within these bloodline mysteries. For centuries, humanity searched for clear origins, a single homeland, a single ancestry, a single answer. Genetics revealed something far more profound. Human history is not the story of separate peoples moving along separate paths. It is the story of countless journeys crossing one another again and again. The blood flowing through modern populations is not the legacy of one migration. It is the legacy of thousands. Every genome is a mosaic. Every family tree is intertwined with countless others. Every person carries fragments of people they will never know. Ancient hunters, nomadic herders, early farmers, forgotten traders, lost civilizations, extinct human relatives, all of them survive, in some form, within the DNA of the present. And so the mystery was never really about discovering a single hidden bloodline. The mystery was discovering that there are no truly isolated bloodlines at all. The deeper science looks into the past, the more humanity appears connected, across continents, across cultures, across time itself. What once seemed like separate stories are increasingly revealed as chapters of the same story, a story that began hundreds of thousands of years ago in Africa, a story carried across deserts, mountains, forests, and oceans, a story preserved not in monuments or empires, but in molecules, and hidden within those molecules is a truth both simple and extraordinary. Every human being is a living archive, a collection of ancient journeys, a meeting place of forgotten worlds, a bridge between people separated by thousands of generations. The unexplained bloodline mysteries that fascinated scientists were never merely about genetics, they were about memory, the memory of migrations, the memory of survival, the memory of ancestors whose names have been lost, but whose DNA continues its journey through the living. Because long after kingdoms fall, languages disappear and civilizations turn to dust, the genome remains, quietly carrying the story forward, waiting for the next discovery, waiting for the next question, waiting for humanity to uncover another piece of its own forgotten past. The deeper we look into our DNA, the less we find strangers in history, and the more we find relatives.